What up, y'all? Welcome back. Today we're looking at a fun little head-to-head comparison, the Fuji X100V versus the Leica Q. Which one's a better camera, and more importantly, a better camera for you? Let's get into it. First of all, I want to say I have owned and used these cameras somewhat extensively. I really love them both and don't have very many negative things to say about each of them. Let's talk about price, because that is a big thing. Price and availability should somewhat affect your buying decision here. The Fuji X100V is $1,399 brand new. They're readily available. You can get them at any camera store right now. The Leica Q, on the other hand, is about $2,600 used, is about a 6-year-old camera now, and they're kind of getting hard to find, especially in good condition. Big downfall with the Leica Q is you don't know the shutter count. Leica does not do a good job of being able to readily find out the shutter count of used Leica Qs, so you kind of just have to go off wear and tear, which is still not a very good indication of the condition of the cameras on the inside. Let's talk sensor and lens to start. The Fuji has a 26.1 megapixel APS-C CMOS sensor that is absolutely excellent. Fuji does a really good job with colors and saturation. It shoots in 14-bit depth, and I can tell you the images coming out of this thing are really beautiful. This paired with a 23mm f2.0 lens. It's a brand new lens for this generation, and they really did a really good job with things that it struggled in the past, like sharpness and, chromatic aberration and barrel distortion. All those sorts of things have been corrected in this newer generation, and I really do like the lens. Now, it is a 35mm equivalent because of the crop sensor, but more on that later. Jumping over to the Leica Q, it is a 24 megapixel full frame sensor. Absolutely superb sensor, one of the best I've ever seen, especially for being 6 years old, and it's paired with a 28mm f1.7 Summilux lens, and that is really the star child here of this Leica Q. That lens is probably the best lens I've ever shot at 28mm. It is absolutely fantastic. Can't stress enough. On its own, it would probably be priced at about $2,500, $3,000 if you were getting it standalone and pairing it with like an M body, but that lens is really good. Let's talk about viewfinders and screens on both of these cameras. On the Fuji, you have the unique hybrid optical viewfinder. It's where they have an optical viewfinder and then you have a digital overlay on top of it. If anyone has used Fujis and seen these, they are really nice to shoot. One of my favorite things about the Fuji, in fact, is a proprietary feature that it draws me into really wanting to shoot it because it's that good. It's especially good at being able to anticipate and frame up your shot before your subject enters the frame. So if someone is walking from the side, you can see them before they hit your frame lines, prepare for the shot, and then get a perfectly composed image ahead of time. This X100V also introduced a 3-inch tilting touchscreen that was never a thing in the past. It's about 1.6 million dots, and it actually is a pretty bright and nicely looking display on the back. It's nice that you can be able to tilt, especially if you're doing low or high angles. That adds a nice little feature. Now, jumping over to the Leica Q, the 3.6 million dot electronic viewfinder just seems age. It seems appropriate for its age, but it does seem age. And I don't know if I'm just subjective because I'm seeing newer electronic viewfinders so often right now, but it just looks kind of old, kind of dingy, a little bit dim, and just not as nice to use, as does the back 3-inch touchscreen display. It was kind of revolutionary for its time 6 years ago, but now it's just not as responsive, not as bright, not as beautiful, and definitely not as sharp. I noticed when I was reviewing images on the back display of the Leica Q, I sometimes thought they were soft or my colors were off or it wasn't exposed correctly. Come to find out later on a computer that it was just a dull display that I wasn't used to seeing. So the back screen and electronic viewfinder on the Q are both losers in comparison to the X100V. Moving on to more features to discuss. Neither one of these cameras have built-in image stabilization, so that's a negative for both. The Fuji does have a weather-sealed body. The Leica Q does not. That's a huge win for a lot of you daily shooters or travel photographers or ones that are out on the beach or in dewy situations. The X100V is a superior body when it comes to that. The Leica Q, I really don't like taking in any of those environments. Both of these cameras do shoot video, but I wouldn't consider either of them to be their strong suit, especially the Leica Q. That's again, old technology. Shoots 1080 60p, but it's just not very good. The continuous autofocus is really poor. You don't have any external ports to pair up a mic or headphones or anything like that. No ND filters, so just poor overall, something I don't really use. Now, the X100V does have full 4K video, does shoot in H.264, can pair up an external mic, although it's just a micro mic jack, but you can do that, and a headphone jack through the USB ports. And it does shoot a pretty good job with real-time eye tracking, autofocus, so the video is usable. I just wouldn't consider it, you know, a videography first camera, but if you do need to shoot any type of video or short clips, the X100V again is a winner in this department. All right, so this is 4K video coming out of the X100V. What do you guys think? I think it's a very usable video for 4K, and I'm just happy that they have the option at all, as well as eye autofocus and continuous focus. That does hunt a little bit, especially when I throw my hands up like this. You can tell it hunts a little bit, but overall I'd say it looks pretty good. This is the onboard audio. I didn't want to plug in any external audio because of course that would sound good, but I wanted you guys to hear just what it sounds like straight out of camera. The other thing to know is that in 4K you can only have a 10-minute record limit, so that might be a hindrance for some. But overall, as a travel compact camera, I'm just happy they have quality 4K coming out of this at all. What do you guys think? Down the line, I got more victories for the X100V. It has built-in ND filters that you can use in both video and photography. Works really well. And it's got really good burst modes compared to the Leica Q. If you're using the mechanical shutter in the X100V, you can get 11 frames per second. And if you're using the electronic shutter, you can get 20 frames per second. Granted, you have a 17 frame max, you know, it maxes out the buffer if you're shooting in RAW. That jumps up almost to double if you're shooting in JPEG. But that's a big difference in compared to the Leica Q. The Leica Q only shoots in 10 frames per second, has a horribly slow buffer, almost to the point where I never shoot in burst modes with the Q because it locks up and takes so long to clear the buffer. Huge win for the X100V. Physical design, ergonomics, fit and finish, that's kind of a subjective preference here. I personally like the X100V because it's got the dual dials on the front and back. It's more like a traditional DSLR feel. It does have tactical dials on the tops and sides for everything: ISO, aperture, shutter speed, as well as choosing your focus modes. It's got dials for all those, so you can quickly, easily jump in and out of those settings. Leica Q, on the other hand, does take a little bit of a learning curve, and it's a different setup, although still good and very, very durable. The aperture ring on the barrel I really like, as do the shutter dial on the top of the camera. The ISO is a little button on the back. Don't really like that. But all in all, if you want to get in and out of focus modes, it's just the dial on the barrel as well. So both really good ergonomics. I really like the fit and finish a little bit better on the Leica Q. Feels a little more durable and has obviously lasted a really long time. But again, this could just be a personal preference. The one thing I will say is that the X100V feels a lot smaller and a lot lighter in your hand and in your pocket than the Leica Q. Although the V is not that much smaller in, you know, physical design, it is lighter and does feel a lot smaller in my hand. When I pick up the Q, it's a big magnesium body with some heft to it and just feels a lot heavier for day-to-day use. So wrapping this bad boy up, let's have a little summarization. When it comes to viewfinder, burst modes, video, weather sealing, overall value, ports, and the screen, the X100V all win in all those categories. I've got the winning categories for the Leica Q as lens, sensor, and image quality. Those are the three things that the Leica Q does better than the V. This brings me to the big question: which camera should you buy? And for all intents and purposes, in majority of the categories I've gone over, the X100V is the winner here. It is more accurate. You're gonna get a better hit rate with real-time eye tracking autofocus. It's a faster camera, better burst, better processor, smaller, lighter, better protected, features like ND filters, better dials on them throughout. Overall, the X100V is a better camera with newer, better technology than the Q. So for most people, I would say the X100V is definitely the way to go, especially when it comes to value. When you're talking about price, you're talking about $1,399 for a brand new camera. You can get these used for about $1,100, whereas the Qs, they're kind of hard to find. You can only find them used, and it's kind of a crapshoot on the quality and the used camera that you get, and they're running about $2,500 to $2,600. So yes, about $1,200 more, but really in the big picture, things that double the price of the X100V. But as much as I recommend the X100V for most people, you really need to think about what it is you're shooting and buy for those purposes as an artist. Because for me, I actually ended up selling my X100V recently because I so highly valued image quality and the camera as a strict photography camera. And for those purposes, I really preferred the Leica Q, and let me tell you why. For most artists out there that I see shopping for these cameras, you're really looking for a day-to-day camera that you can carry around with you in your bag all the time, or a travel camera or a street camera. But these are not your primary work shooters or your primary, all-around camera. If you're gonna be doing video for YouTube, or if you're gonna be doing fast action sports photography, or portrait work, you're probably gonna have a DSLR with an interchangeable lens. You're probably not gonna use either one of these cameras. In fact, these cameras are probably going to be used more for like content creation or travel photography or, everyday photography. And for those reasons, I don't know that you need all the features that come with the X100V. In fact, I would argue most of the Fuji users, are you really going to even be shooting 4K video with this thing? Probably not. Are you going to be pairing up an external microphone? Are you going to be using ND filters? I don't know. Those are all questions that you should be asking. What I found for me personally and what I used these cameras for, I prioritized having a full frame camera with better low light capabilities, sharper images, and overall better image quality. And those are all coming out of the Leica Q. There's no substitute for pairing up an absolutely superb, excellent f1.7 Summilux lens to a really good full frame sensor. You can cover it up with all the technology and advancements that you want, but a crop sensor with a less quality lens just can't stack up in image quality when you compare it to the Leica Q setup. And for that reason, I personally choose the Leica Q. I think it's a really, really good value for the price that it is right now. And I think the images coming out of it just really cannot be compared to the images that are coming out of the Fuji X100V. Not to say the V puts out bad images. In fact, I would say they are good images versus the Leica just comes in at great images. So I hope this video brought you some value. If it did, please hit me with a subscribe and a thumbs up, more importantly, to boost my ever so small channel to the 4 watchers. The algorithm can really help out those poor people that watch my channel. I appreciate you guys. Let me know what you think, because I always love arguing and talking cameras. Which camera do you think is a better buy? Which one do you guys plan on purchasing? Let me know in the comments below. I appreciate you guys. I'll talk to you next one. Peace.